Relevant, connected, great conversation. The Rick and Suzanne Show. Catch them live, weekdays 1 to 3 on CJAD 800.
Peer pressure. And how it almost destroyed our Dan Delmar. He's suffering the consequences of exposure on social networks now because of what he did last night. And you have only yourself to blame, my friend.
This is so embarrassing.
Why can't we say no, Suzanne?
Well, it's Dan is obviously doing the walk of shame today.
Yes, he is.
And it's an interesting story. So let's start at the top. Dan Delmar is in here in the studio with us. And Dan, what happened and where did it happen? And give us all the dirty details.
Okay, so during July, I cover a lot of Just for Laughs shows, and I was at a Zoo Fest show, which is their alternative comedy series. And so I was at the Mainline Theatre on Saint Laurent, and performing was a comedian by the name of Adam Riches. He had won the Edinburgh Fringe Festival Award, which is a very prestigious festival. So I thought, I hadn't really heard of him, but I thought this was, a big deal. So I went to see him, and this was the media premiere. So it was about, it was very intimate, maybe 25 people in the audience. So
25.
25, yeah, it's a tiny theater that only seats 40 at most, I would say, in the room. And so I get there, and I walk in. He's really outrageous right away, interacting with all kinds of audience members, pulling them out onto stage.
Very interactive show.
Yes, very intimate, very interactive. And so real quick, my friend insisted on sitting in the front row. Mistake number one.
Big danger.
Front row at a comedy show.
Yeah.
With stand-up, I'm usually fine, but this was different. So, I'm basically taken on stage, and he wants me to hold this pole with a rope on it and swing it around for a few minutes. So that's what I started doing. I got sick of that, so I just gave it to the guy next to me and had him, swing this thing around.
So there's a whole bunch.
The rule.
There's a whole bunch of people up on stage that he's called up.
Yes.
And he hands you this thing, and he tells you what to do with it, and you're just doing whatever he says.
Right. It's part of the shtick, and it wasn't anything offensive, so I just started swinging this thing around, and then I got bored and gave it to the guy next to me, and the performer saw this, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to get you later." And so I sat back down and got a bit nervous.
And he said that?
He said that. He said, "Yeah, just wait."
Okay.
And so, indeed, the towards the end of the show comes around, and his character is a man in a wheelchair who's blind and dribbling everywhere. It sounds a bit offensive, but it was very slapsticky. It was very odd. And so,
fringe.
So this character calls me up on stage, and he points at me specifically because he knew that I bailed on him before, right? So he says, I want you. So he pulls up to me in his wheelchair, and I said no maybe 3-4 times, but he wouldn't go away. Usually when a performer senses a bit of hesitation from an audience member, he'll just move on to the next one. He was determined to get me on stage. So he did. And
wait a minute.
Okay. Yeah,
so here's the thing.
You go.
This is where the peer pressure comes in.
Stop right there.
Yeah.
He dragged you? Did he push you?
I think he was pulling my arm a little bit. But also, I was saying no a few times, and then the audience started getting into it, and they were clapping, and the whole audience was like, just go on already.
Oh, the applause got you.
The applause got me, and so I did go on, and what happened was a bit traumatic. Well, not traumatic, but just very strange. So this character, he has these assistants on stage who feed him, and so he had me play this silly little game, and afterwards, what he asked me to do was to drink a liquid, which was apple juice, but I think it was meant to be. It was
meant to look like something else.
Look like something
Got
else.
it.
And he wanted me to then put it in my mouth and then drop it into his mouth. And so that's...
What, almost kiss him?
Well, no, I wasn't kissing him. It was from above.
Reese Witherspoon
and you can
type
see
stuff,
see the picture on CJD's Facebook page right now, by the way. And so that's what I did. It was disgusting.
It's not the only Facebook page you can see it on, by the way.
It's on Twitter. It's out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's on the Mainline Theaters page as well. So basically, to sum up, because I felt guilty that I was holding up the show, and because everyone was clapping for me and being very supportive, the audience was great, I felt the need to do this ridiculous, disgusting act because...
You didn't want to hold up the show.
I didn't want to hold up the show.
You put apple juice in your mouth and...
Dropped it into his.
Dropped it into a comedian's on stage in front of people, even though you didn't want to do that.
Correct. And I think
Why could you not
I think it's
say
gross.
No?
I think saying it right now, I'm pretty surprised that I did it because I don't think it's funny. At the time, everyone was hysterical. I'm not quite sure why.
Well, they're not laughing with you. That one I don't think.
Yeah, no, they're definitely laughing at me.
Well, you were so reticent. They're just going, that this guy got you to do something.
Right. And to his credit,
And you're not hypnotized.
no, and to his credit, he completely pushed me outside of my comfort zone, which I think was the goal of the show. But at the same time, there definitely was an element there of everyone wants you to do it. Come on, guys, all the cool kids are doing it, so I did it.
I don't think you're alone. I don't think you're alone. I mean, look at the Tony Robbins thing, walking on coal. You'd think by the third or fourth person that they might give up on the idea because people are getting burned. What was it, 21?
21 people got burned, yeah.
So why can't...
The soles of their feet.
People can't be alone. We've got to hear stories. Make Dan feel better.
Please.
There has to be time.
Well, the only reason Dan feels bad is because Dan was pushed out of his comfort zone. It might not have been bad for somebody else. This is Dan's
Other people loved
issue.
it. Other people were doing wacky things and they were into it.
You feel awful today, though.
A little bit.
And every time you see one of these other social pages pop up, you feel worse.
But he's being very upfront about it. So he's handling it. He's dealing with it. And we'll get him through that. I promise you, Dan.
We'll talk it out.
We need your help to help him feel better. It's been dragged up on stage. Ever been forced to do something you really didn't want to do? Peer pressure? Our Dan can't be alone. We want your stories. 514-790-0991. Star 8255 on the cell. That's Star Talk. Text 514-800.
Now, Dan was at what's it called, Zoo Fest last night?
Yeah.
Is that part of the Just for Laughs? And this...
Where the fringe, the weird stuff.
Yeah, and obviously the comedian or the performer succeeded because he did certainly drag Dan out of his comfort zone to the point where he dribbled apple juice from his mouth into the comedian's mouth. Something Dan Delmar would never do.
Reese Witherspoon, maybe.
Not
Dan
Reese
Delmar.
No. Who
Wasn't
was
it Reese Witherspoon? No,
it was, oh my gosh, Clueless. From Clueless. What's her name? I'm totally blanking. Blonde actress. Wasn't Reese who would gurgle up the food and
regurgitate
then
her food?
regurgitate her
I thought it was
food.
Reese.
No, it's
I'm
not
gonna
Reese.
Get sued now.
No, we'll find out the name. I will look it up in a second. She was the actress from Clueless, and she's on Supergatory right now. I'm blanking on her name. Anyways, all this to say that here, doing something outside of our comfort zone, does that make it, peer pressure? Or is it only become peer pressure when we do something that is harmful, perhaps, to ourselves or to somebody else, and it's against our inner instinct that says, don't do this. Your gut, I've always told my kids, when your gut speaks, you listen because it's telling you exactly what you already know, and that's what you need to follow. That's your comfort zone. So it's interesting that Dan went through all of that last night. And I've been trying to think, because, here I was a black sheep when I went to high school.
I find that hard to believe.
No, come on now. I was considered a black sheep because I was in a Catholic all-girls school. And if everybody was walking down the hall one way, I'd try and go to the other. Just to, I don't know if it's just, I'm here or I'm, railing against the establishment. It was one of those. It was that time anyways. And I'm trying to think of a moment when got one. Freshman year. So I'm in the 9th grade. And the first freshman trip that we have, already the principal has stood up in front of us and told us that we were all, Alicia Silverstone, thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Gad. That's who I'm talking about. Anyways, the principal has already, welcomed us to the school and told us that we were at the bottom end of the totem pole, as she put it, that we had no power and no worth, and only through education and through age would we get to the top of the totem pole. It didn't matter who you were, what you knew, what you brought to the table. You were a freshman, you were nothing. And so we go on this freshman trip, which is a bus trip, and we're all from different schools, so it's not like I knew these people. And all of a sudden, one of the girls in the back of the bus, we're on our way to Baltimore, back of the bus, pulls out one of those little airline bottles of alcohol and starts passing it around. And it landed in my lap. And I went, oh, we're in the 9th grade. We're only talking about an ounce of alcohol being passed around the back of the bus. I took a sip. We got to the place we were going to in Baltimore, museum, and then a church. We took off. I was with the bad girls now. I like the bad girls. We run off down to the church basement and light up cigarettes. We're not allowed to smoke while we're in uniform. Certainly never on a class trip. You have to go home.
You would never do any of this alone.
Oh, no. No, you have to be in a group to do that. I'm not going to go in the corner down to a church basement and light up a cigarette. I'm doing that because we're a group. And that was the one time. But anyways, all this to say, we got caught. I was under, not suspension, but I was under, they were watching me. You know, I had a year. And if I did one more thing, I was out the door. So I had to be on my best behavior for 1 year. And, so that was one time where peer pressure, but we were smoking, in the basement of a church. Come on, why?
Just because
Why?
others were.
Just because. And it was not something that we needed to do. It wasn't something we needed to have. We had one kid being a smartass and bringing this little bottle of alcohol that they found from their parents' drawer or something. And Lucinda Myers. I remember who had it, too. Lucinda Myers.
You all had a sip of a 1-ounce bottle of booze, and you're all gunned up to the point where you're all drinking and
just doing
smoking.
We're just doing it just to be defiant.
I'm just wondering, you get caught up in some of these things. I remember walking into a floor show in Las Vegas, and one of these magician acts where they, or not magician, but a hypnotist, and sitting down and realizing that it's somebody I know who's on stage in their underpants, pretending they're like a chicken walking around. And I'm like, how the hell did they ever get Mike to do that? And then, they hypnotized him. And he's regretted that because they give you the video, and then, friends have taken the video. The video's been posted online, and now he's running around in his underpants. Well, he's embarrassed by it all. That's something he would never do.
Isn't that the idea?
And he's completely freaked out that, first of all, he could have been hypnotized to do it. And secondly, that it's, his friends, quotation, his friends have now put that on social pages and stuff. Because he's in his, thank God he was wearing,
well, they would never.
The boxers and not the briefs. That's all I have to say.
Well, no. I mean, John Cryer goes on television in his briefs all the time. His tidy whities. I mean, it's no big deal. But it's interesting. I'm wondering, is it more our reaction to something like that, something to your friend or to Dan? It's their own personal reaction to where they feel it's peer pressure, like Dan didn't want to hold up the show. He obviously felt that this performer was not going to let Dan go. And they could sit there for 5-10 minutes, and if Dan steadfastly refused, the performer was not going to give up.
But I think the applause got him going. He heard the applause,
but he also
and then you go. And the Tony Robbins people, you have such faith in the leader. They're walking on the coals.
Well, Oprah did that. To be fair,
21 of them have burns. So you'd think after the third one, this isn't working. I'm number 4. I'm not going. Well,
you got to wonder, is he spreading his magic as much as he used to? Because, everybody before believed they could do it. Obviously, they weren't believing well enough because they burnt their tootsies.
Yeah, and they're lawyered up.
This is the Rick and Suzanne Show podcast. Hear Rick and Suzanne live, weekdays 1 to 3 on CJAD 800.
What's really in the burger you're eating? Jane Ibbetson is a nutritious and author, Smart Eating Made Simple. And this is quite a woman, Suzanne.
Well, she's been doing this for quite a while. She holds a Master of Science in Nutrition. And Jane is joining us, I believe, from Arizona this afternoon. Jane, is that right?
Yes, I am. I'm so excited to be on your program.
Well, we're very happy to have you because you've spent a lifetime pretty much, or certainly a career, not only raising 6 children, but studying this. And, well, let's start with the burger because we are, in that summertime mode and you hear, burgers this and burgers that. Is there any redeeming or non-redeeming qualities with eating a burger?
Well, I tell you, we have to be careful what we eat. I grew up raising steers, and that's a young beef, and I showed them in these livestock shows, and so that's just right down my alley. But I don't know, these animals that are raised in feedlots nowadays, we have to be really careful because they have hormones, antibiotics. They're just taken out of their natural surroundings of being on grass. That's where they really should be. And you've probably heard of pink slime, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Well, that is made from the slaughterhouse scraps and the inedible parts of the steer. And the government says that it's heavily contaminated, so we must treat that bacteria with ammonia. So that's what we're facing, and I just think it's more important that we eat organic, grass-fed beef.
Now, Jane, the name of the book is Smart Eating Made Simple. We have been hearing over the years how we're supposed to eat. How are you going to make it simple for us?
Well, you just have to plan your work and work your plan. My husband and I like to go and buy a lot of vegetables, and we like to buy them locally. We're here in Arizona, the lettuce capital of the world, and so we have the opportunity of buying so many different kinds of vegetables. We buy them, we take them home, we wash them, we chop them up, we bag them, and that way they're all ready to go for steaming or stir frying, whatever we choose to do. And also, like I might on the weekend I might cook a pot of brown rice and a pot of beans, and I'll freeze it in batches. And Suzanne, something else that I did the other day was garbanzo beans, and I make hummus with those, and it's so good. And I have a recipe in my book, Smart Eating Made Simple, for hummus and pesto, and also a sweet chili sauce that is really good. If the children do not like vegetable, put a little bit of that sweet chili sauce on it, and they'll love it.
I have to ask you, Jane, when this revelation occurred, because as Suzanne pointed out, you've raised kids, you've got grandchildren now, you've got an education and a lifetime behind you, and all of a sudden, is it all of a sudden, or when did it happen that you realized that you had to make different food choices?
Well, it was about shortly before I retired. I was having health problems, and as a nutritionist, I thought I knew what to do, but I have to admit that I must have been doing something wrong, and come to find out I did have problems, and I went to work every day feeling tired. I was a hard worker, but when you get to the point you could sleep 24/7, there's something wrong. I was dragging one leg, and I had a hurting hip, and I had gone to many doctors, and the neurologist convinced the endocrinologist that I should have my thyroid zapped with radioactive iodine, and I did quit dragging one leg, but you know what, I was still tired, and I just was continuing on a downhill slide for the next 10 years, and I had 2 knee replacements, and even after one of the knee replacements, I was hanging onto the wall, and I thought, how can I continue to go to work like this? This is just too bad, I can't do this. Well, I read about an article in the paper about arthritis. They were having a seminar at the library, and I went, and I followed their program. And I ate fish and mostly vegetables, and eliminated foods that I was allergic to, and I had like 80% improvement. So for me, it was no return to the standard American diet. I wanted to tell my children and my grandkids about this, so that's why I wrote this book, and I am never changing back to the standard American diet.
That is an amazing story. We're speaking to Jane Ibbetson. She's a nutritionist and author of the book Smart Eating Made Simple. She also holds a Master of Science in Nutrition. So, Jane, you went to a seminar, and you found out that perhaps what you were eating was contributing to the way you were feeling. So what was the first steps that you started to take to change the way that you eat?
Well, I just had a selection of foods that did not cause allergies. There's to give you an example, I only ate white fish. I only used olive oil. The vegetables were like peas and green beans.
This was the changes that you made?
Yes, the changes I made. And just very, I could have lettuce, And then on the fruits, I could have like plums and pears, and I can't remember for sure all of them, but, very simple things. And I just had to create my own recipes. I couldn't have any herbs and spices except celery salt and regular salt,
No herbs even?
No, not because they can cause allergies too.
Wow.
Like oregano. I have an allergy to oregano. And this was helping cleanse my body. And after about 21 days, then I got to feeling better. But I knew it was the vegetables. They're healing foods. They just fit us almost like our socks do, because they just take toxins out of our body, and they provide fiber that we need. They're in like the cruciferous vegetables like we raise here in Arizona, like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, collard greens, beet greens, all of those types of things. They pull the toxins out of the body and cleanse the body, and it just provides a lot of vitamins and phytonutrients and so forth that the body needs.
Now, Jane, you mentioned that you still eat fish and things like that, but you haven't become a vegan. But is that a good thing or a bad thing to become a vegan?
Many foods make up a vegan diet, like the genetically modified soy and corn. And the genetically modified foods can be detrimental to our health. And, vegans avoid animal products. So if one eliminates one food group from your diet, then we usually replace it with something else. And in most cases, it's usually sugar and carbohydrates. And that's correlated with cancer. So, it's just from a clinical point of view, I believe virtually everyone benefits from some animal protein. It doesn't have to be meat necessarily, as there are other healthy animal proteins like raw organic dairy and organic free-range eggs.
So dairy is still a good part of your diet?
Yes. The argument that eating meat ruins the environment refers to meat coming from feedlots, not the meat raised naturally on grass. And the real culprit threatening the environment is modern-day industrial agriculture.
Yeah.
Producing food on a massive scale at the lowest price possible has taken priority over obeying the natural laws.
Jane, you're healthier now. You're healthy?
Right, I am.
So it's never too late to change.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for this. Interesting. And the book is called Smart Eating Made Simple. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
This is the Rick and Suzanne Show podcast. Hear Rick and Suzanne live, weekdays 1 to 3 on CJAD 800.
Alrighty, here we go. Photoshopping bugs me, by the way. When I see a photoshopped model, female, and it's obvious that it's photoshopped, I'm disappointed in that. I don't for a moment think that's reality. That's, what is that? What they did on Vogue with Adele, remember? That made me crazy.
Oh, yeah. But guess what?
Crazy.
The thing is this.
What?
Photoshopping, it's like social media. It's here.
Yeah.
It's going to stay. And the thing is that everything is photoshopped. So therefore, we have to know that when we look at magazines and we go, oh my God, they're so perfect, or look what they did to Adele. Why did they do that? It doesn't matter. We know they did it, so we know it's not real, so you can look at it like a big fancy comic book.
But what's the point? Dr. Lori Bettito is here to help us understand.
What's the point?
Yeah. I mean, if
People
it's not real.
Well, but people who get their pictures taken want to look their best. They're all made up. They're going to be looked at by millions of people. They want to look their best. A little photoshopping. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem when people want to take off 20 pounds from who they really are. But, a little smoothing of the skin, skin tone. I mean, that's really what they're doing.
Okay, if you have a blemish on, say, like yesterday, we had photographs done. We have to update our website and everything, and they put you through makeup,
right?
Which is the weirdest thing.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah,
well,
right.
This is it, and no thank you, because it feels awful. But if I had a blemish for that day, I could say, yeah, I need a little help with that, because that's not going to be attractive. They can do that.
Yeah.
My teeth cleanings are every 6 months. I got a little tartar over here. They can make that go away now. It's amazing what they can do with Photoshop. So you have the perfect smile or whitest teeth. But then, if that's not the way your teeth are, and I've got a chipped tooth, and I'm never going to let them fill that in. That's who I am. If then you risk disappointment when someone finally meets you. You don't look anything like your picture.
Welcome to Facebook.
Yeah.
or online dating. They post pictures they don't look anything like.
So what's the point?
But the whole point is, when you're taking a picture, as Dr. Bettito is pointing out, it's supposed to be, certainly in a professional way, whether it be a magazine, whether it be on a website, whether it be as you're going for a job application, the real estate agent puts the sign up in front of the house. You want to put your best foot forward. No, you don't. You can't make. I can't make myself look like Adele, and Adele can't make herself look like me. We still have to be who we are. You still have to show who you are. But by the same token, you want that picture to be perhaps your best look on your best day. You know, when you have those great days. That's the picture you want. So Photoshop, not everybody has great days every day. Photoshop helps a little bit.
I wouldn't Photoshop a picture, for example, if I was on a dating site. I think that is what you're talking about, Rick, is like when you present yourself and you look so made up in the picture and all Photoshopped, and then you're natural or more real, then you don't match so well. In those, but again, it's not a professional shot. This is...
Remember when Katie Couric first got the job as a news anchor on CBS, and there were pictures all over New York City where Katie Couric is not a skin and bones person. She's a real woman. And what did they do? They took, 20 pounds off of her?
Yeah.
Which wasn't... And everybody's looking, saying, wait a minute, we see Katie Couric every day on the Today Show. That's not her.
Right. What happened? She gained weight?
No,
you see her, but
she lost weight.
I know, but you see her and then you say you gain weight so fast from the pictures to being on television?
But let's not kid ourselves, too. The talents are very much involved in the selection of those pictures, as we were yesterday, and I'm sure any talent is. They go, what do you think? What do you like? And then marketing gets involved, but you're still involved in the steps. I mean... I don't know that I certainly don't have approval at the end of the process. She probably doesn't either, and there's enormous pressure. But when it comes to modeling and then selling, an image and what it's done to kids, I mean, these kids not too long ago,
this is
these
the point.
teens going to Vogue begging them to stop this.
Yeah, this is where the photoshopping, and this is where the conversation has to go, Lori.
Well, with kids, of course, kids who read magazines, Teen Vogue, young kids are reading that, who don't know what photoshopping is. Which today, a lot of kids are very savvy on the computer. They're photoshopping their own pictures. So they know what goes in. But you need to have that conversation because it does affect body image. It does affect that, what they see in a magazine are going to be the perfect looking kind of females, and that isn't your average looking girl, and that's what the conversation has to be.
All right, there's so much more. It's 219 Body Image. Dr. Lori Bettito joining us on a Tuesday at 219, and of course we'll take your calls and your text 514-800 514-790-0991 star 8255 Star Talk on the cell phone. Kids as young as 6.
Now, this is a disturbing study that we were talking about yesterday, that girls seem to feel like they're under pressure to be sexy younger. And I looked at this study, Lori, and I'm going, they don't even know what sexy means. But the study took, I think, 60 girls,
yes,
and gave them a choice of 2 dolls. One wearing a trendy outfit, but, really kind of covered you up. And another one that was, tighter and perhaps shorter and showed a little bit more. And these little 6-year-old girls picked, guess what?
The sexy
one. Sure, because they equate sexiness with popularity. But also it's what they're exposed to in the media. 6-year-old girls are watching, Miley Cyrus and all those shows that are made for kids. They're seeing that there. They're hearing songs. They're singing songs about, I'm sexy and I know. I mean, they're singing the words.
But they don't know what the words mean.
Sometimes they don't know, but they'll use the word. And they figure it out pretty fast what the word means.
Okay, so what does that mean for our little girls that are losing their innocence? What do mom and dad have to do? And why are these little girls starting to feel this way?
What do mom and dad have to do with this? That's important because who's buying their clothes? Mom and dad. Who's taking them shopping? True, when you take a little girl shopping, you see the clothes that are out there, and so much of it just seems completely inappropriate.
It's just shrunken adult clothing,
right? Like all
as opposed to girl centric,
right? And all and the belly shirts and all this. So it's up to us to impose our values on our kids and to let them know what we feel is appropriate for their age, and we're ultimately making the decision to purchase this or not. And we need to stand firm to that.
Well, what about a parent? You do want your children to feel like they're fitting in, that they're popular, whatever. So if you're not going to take them to the store and buy them, a hoop skirt and send them off to school.
No, but you can compromise. You can say, you can find something that's an in-between so that you say, look, I'm completely against this. What about this or this or this? And then you give them some choices or get them to take out a few choices.
Okay, because this is a bad thing down the road. Like, why would you do that? Like, if a child who doesn't seem to know what sexy means is dressing that way down the road, what's it going to do?
Well, again, it
consequence?
affects the consequence is body image problems, not being happy with themselves. I mean, it's all rolled into the popularity, and if I'm skinny, if I'm perfect, if I'm this, then I'll be popular. The boys will like me, the girls will like me. All of this. So obviously, it creates a discontent about one's body or trying to achieve a certain perfection that really doesn't exist. But we need to be having these conversations with girls, especially boys too, but that's later that they experience body image issues. But for girls from a young age, and moms have to stop emulating for them. For example, how many moms, will go to a dressing room with the kids and look, oh, I'm so fat in this. Oh, I look awful in this. And, oh, God, I hate this bulge and I hate my body. They're hearing this, and that's part of the problem. Maybe moms who aren't necessarily overweight or just dissatisfied, well, they're teaching the girls that as women, we're just dissatisfied.
Because women are constantly verbally criticizing themselves.
Yeah.
And so, that's the point. I mean, I've done it. I'm not going to say I'm
I think
perfect.
we've all been guilty.
I can't get dressed. This doesn't fit. And my girls they're all standing there. They're hearing me.
That's right. Or you go to your teenager. Does this make me look fat? Does this, does this look okay?
You blew my mind just a few minutes ago before we came back during commercials on something that a gynecologist told you about, and let's move it up to teens now, puberty, and what's going on.
Well, we're talking about beauty, but there's the outward, the clothing and the sexiness, but there's also the naked beauty that's being determined by our culture and the media. They're creating for us what the ideal is for, genital beauty, let's say. So now we're having a generation of kids growing up not really knowing the purpose of like pubic hair, for example, or never having seen it. Kids today,
because it should be waxed.
Well, kids today are generally exposed to pornography at a very young age. By 13, 14, mostly all children have seen some pornographic images.
You mean from the internet?
From the internet, pop-ups, whatever. Yes. So huge number. And some of them have a regular diet of pornography, especially boys, but some girls too, in terms of curiosity, etc. You will never, in today's pornography, ever see a porn actress with pubic hair. They just don't. They're not there.
In this day and age.
No, in this day and age. So that's what they see, and that's what they believe is what girls should look like. That's what boys... I remember having a conversation with a young man in his early 20s who said, ugh, I'd never sleep with a woman who had pubic hair, as if it was like the worst sin possible, and disgusted by it.
Really?
Yes, and so that's affecting also how girls see themselves, how boys see girls, and it's defining for us what we should look like, even naked.
Well, so what does a parent... Again, I got to go back and say, what do you do to say... to help them to learn to be natural? Well, to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, but what you're teaching them is how to be critical thinkers of what they're consuming. So we're not going to be able to tell them, don't watch this, don't do that. They're going to do it whether you tell them to or not, because they'll be exposed. Even if you have parental controls at home, they'll be exposed at a friend's house or what have you. But you need to talk to them about pornography, about what they're watching, that it is fantasy, that these are not real women. Women don't behave that way. Men don't look like that. Sex doesn't even happen in that way in the real world. So these conversations have to happen. But you can imagine if you're not having sex education conversations, you're not going to, necessarily have porn conversations.
Or body image.
So it's all together now. We can't neglect that part of it.
And being out there.
Right. And you want to raise kids to be proud of their bodies and also proud of their sexuality and own their sexuality. So they're not exposing themselves, throwing out their sexuality out there without thought or consequence, because there's a lot of consequences, as we've seen.
Doc, all right, we're going to break for news in a few minutes, and then we're going to continue, too. I want to get caught up with the text, though, Suzanne.
Yeah.
Dr. Lori Bettito is in, and we're talking about kids and sexiness.
And sexiness and body image. And one texter says, Suzanne, I just heard your comment about children sexing themselves up. There's a program on what we call TLC. I don't know why they call that the learning channel anymore.
kidding.
I guess you're learning what not to do. Called Toddlers and Tiaras. Yeah, one of my favorites. And that encourages
being
tots,
facetious.
very facetious, that encourages their tots and their parents to do just that. Absolutely, Angela. That's exactly what that show is. Rick, you've got a text asking if your wife wears makeup, isn't it, it's not her natural self. It's the same kind of thing. We all wear a little makeup. There's nothing wrong with that. Photoshop and plastic surgery. Even Angelina Jolie had her nose redone, even though there was nothing wrong with it. She wanted it to be just, so perfect. Another texter says, I remember one of my girlfriends knocking on my door and me seeing her and saying, oh my God, what's wrong? She said, nothing. I said, you looked horrible. She said, well, I didn't have time to put my makeup on. Isn't that something?
Yikes.
And here's something. This is disturbing. So, Maria, I would ask you to act on this. My brother-in-law calls his 3-year-old daughter sexy and makes her say it. Makes me want to vomit. Yeah, Maria, that sounds. What about something like that, Laura?
Vomit, exactly. It's inappropriate, and it's sending the wrong message.
Yeah.
Let her be a kid.
Listen to The Rick and Suzanne Show live weekdays 1 to 3 on CJAD 800 and at CJAD.com.